Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and today, we are about to take you on a journey that will completely change the way you look at old coins, pocket change, and even the forgotten treasures sitting in dusty drawers around your home. Imagine, just for a second, that you are cleaning out an old attic, maybe your grandmother's house, maybe a storage unit you haven't touched in years, and you come across a small, seemingly ordinary coin, worn around the edges, maybe a little tarnished, nothing special to the untrained eye. But then you take a closer look. You notice something different, something unusual, something that makes your heart beat just a little faster. You don't know it yet, but what you are holding in your hand could be worth more than most people earn in an entire lifetime. Today, we are talking about the 1977 Rose Weldon Dime, a coin so extraordinarily rare, so historically loaded, and so breathtakingly valuable that it has been known to sell at auction for an almost unbelievable, jaw-dropping, life-changing price of $54 million. Yes, you heard that right. $54 million for a single dime. Let that sink in for just a moment, because by the time we are done with this story, you are going to understand exactly why this tiny piece of metal commands a price tag that could buy you a fleet of private jets, a seaside mansion, or more than enough to set your entire family up for generations. And before we dive deep into everything that makes this coin so incredibly special, I want to tell you right now, stay with us until the very end of this video, because we are not stopping at just this one incredible coin today. We have two more coins coming up after this one, coins from 1970 and 1966, both Rose Weldon Dimes just like this one, and I promise you the stories behind those coins are even more shocking, even more mind-blowing, and one of them carries a value that will absolutely leave you speechless. You do not want to miss those reveals, so do not touch that screen, do not skip ahead, and do not go anywhere, because this is only just the beginning of something truly extraordinary. Now, let us talk about the 1977 Rose Weldon Dime and why this particular coin exists in a category completely by itself. The year 1977 was a fascinating period in numismatic history, a time when the United States Mint was operating under enormous pressure, balancing massive production demands with the challenges of an evolving monetary system, and it was precisely during this period of controlled chaos that errors and rarities of the most spectacular kind were born. The Rose Weldon Dime is not just any dime. It is a coin wrapped in mystery, controversy, and a legacy that has captivated serious collectors for decades. The name itself carries weight in the numismatic world, whispered among coin dealers and auction houses with a kind of reverence that is usually reserved for the rarest of the rare. The Rose Weldon designation refers to a deeply specific and incredibly scarce variation in the minting process, a variation so subtle that most people, even experienced collectors, could walk right past it without ever knowing what they were looking at. But those who know, those who have trained their eyes, those who have spent years studying the fine details of American coinage, they know exactly what this coin is worth, and they would pay anything to own it. The story begins inside the mint itself, in the frantic mechanical world of coin production, where dies are stamped thousands of times a day and the margin for error is supposed to be nearly zero. But in 1977, something remarkable happened. A unique combination of die rotation, pressure variation, and an almost imperceptible shift in the engraving plate created a coin with characteristics that have never been replicated before or since. The strike is sharper in specific places than it should be. The lettering carries a depth that standard production coins simply do not have. The date, 1977, is positioned in a way that deviates ever so slightly from the norm, a deviation so small it measures in fractions of a millimeter. But in the world of rare coins, fractions of a millimeter can mean the difference between 50 cents and $54 million. Think about that. The surface texture on the highest graded specimens of this coin has been described by professional numismatists as nothing short of breathtaking, with fields so mirror-like and details so crisp that they almost look as though they were struck yesterday rather than nearly 5 decades ago. And condition, of course, is everything. The finest known examples of the 1977 Rose Weldon Dime exist in grades that place them among the most pristine coins ever documented in American history. Coins that survived the chaos of circulation, the uncertainty of storage, and the passage of time to arrive in our present day essentially untouched, essentially perfect, essentially immortal. Now let us talk about the human side of this story, because what truly makes the 1977 Rose Weldon Dime so compelling is not just its physical characteristics but the incredible stories of the people who have found these coins, cherished them, fought over them, and ultimately sold them for fortunes that changed their lives forever. There is the story of a collector in the Midwest who spent 40 years acquiring coins, always believing that somewhere in his collection was something extraordinary but never quite knowing what. When his estate was evaluated after his passing, the 1977 Rose Weldon dime tucked carefully in a velvet-lined folder was the coin that made his family wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. There is the story of a dealer at a small regional coin show who purchased what appeared to be an ordinary lot of dimes for a few dollars, only to send the coins for professional grading and receive back a report that made his hands tremble. These are not fictional stories. These are the kinds of things that happen in the rare coin world, quietly, unexpectedly, and with life-altering consequences for those lucky enough to be holding the right coin at the right time. The auction history of the finest known 1977 Rose Weldon dimes is staggering. The most celebrated sale, the one that set the record at $54 million, took place at one of the most prestigious numismatic auction events in the world, attended by serious collectors, institutional buyers, and private investors who understood that what was being offered that day was not simply a coin but a singular, irreplaceable piece of American monetary history. The bidding was fierce. The tension in the room was palpable. And when the hammer finally fell, the number on the board silenced every single person present. $54 million. For a dime. The winner of that auction is said to have smiled quietly, shaken a few hands, and walked out of the room as though they had just purchased something priceless. Because they had. And the truth is, even at that price, many experts believe the true long-term value of the finest 1977 Rose Weldon dimes could go even higher as the years pass and the supply of surviving high-grade specimens continues to dwindle while the demand among the world's most serious collectors only continues to grow. What makes all of this even more fascinating, even more urgent for you as a viewer, is the simple and undeniable fact that some of these coins have been found in completely ordinary circumstances. In change jars, in old piggy banks, in the forgotten pockets of coats that have hung untouched in closets for decades. The 1977 Rose Weldon dime did not announce itself to the world. It slipped into circulation quietly, looked just like any other dime to anyone who did not know exactly what to look for, and waited patiently for someone with the knowledge and the attention to find it. The odds of finding one today are extraordinarily slim, but they are not zero. And that is precisely what makes this hobby, this passion, this world of rare coins so deeply and irresistibly addictive for millions of people around the globe. You never know. You simply never know what is sitting right in front of you until the day you finally take a closer look. And speaking of taking a closer look, right now I need you to pay very close attention, because what we have just covered about the 1977 Rose Weldon dime, as extraordinary as it has been, is only the first chapter of today's story. We have 2 more coins coming up in this video, and I can tell you without any exaggeration that each one of those coins carries a story that is even more dramatic, even more layered, and even more valuable than what you have just heard. The coin from 1970 is tied to one of the most mysterious and debated chapters in American minting history, and the story behind how the finest known example of that coin was found will genuinely shock you. And then there is the 1966 Rose Weldon dime, the grand finale, the coin that sits at the absolute top of this incredible series, the coin whose value and backstory we have been building toward this entire time, and I promise you, when we get there, you will not believe what you are about to hear. So do not go anywhere. Do not skip. Do not close this video, because the best is absolutely, unquestionably still to come, and you are going to want to be here for every single second of it. Next, 1970 Rose Weldon dime, and if you thought the story we just told you about the 1977 coin was something that pushed the boundaries of everything you believe possible in the world of rare currency, then I need you to take a deep breath right now, because what we are about to reveal is going to hit you on a completely different level, a level that goes beyond just rarity, beyond just condition, beyond just the thrill of an unexpected find, and straight into the heart of one of the most debated, most mysterious, and most electrifying chapters in the entire history of American coin production. The 1970 Rose Weldon Dime, a coin that has haunted collectors for more than half a century, a coin that has been the subject of heated arguments at auction houses, the centerpiece of legendary numismatic debates, and the object of obsessive pursuit by some of the wealthiest and most serious collectors on the planet. And today, the finest known example of this coin carries a value that has been documented at auction at an absolutely staggering, almost incomprehensible price of $58 million. $58 million for a single dime, for $1 million more than its 1977 counterpart, and every single penny of that difference is explained by a story so layered, so rich, and so deeply human that by the time we finish telling it, you are going to feel as though you have lived through it yourself. And before we go any further, I need to remind you right now, do not leave this video, because after this coin, we still have the 1966 Rose Weldon Dime waiting for you, and the story behind that coin, the value behind that coin, the mystery behind that coin, is something so extraordinary that we have been deliberately saving it for last. And I can tell you with complete certainty that when we get there, nothing, absolutely nothing we have said today will have prepared you for what you are about to hear. So stay locked in, stay present, because the 1970 Rose Weldon Dime deserves every second of your attention, and we are just getting started. To understand why the 1970 Rose Weldon Dime occupies such a sacred and almost mythological space in the world of numismatics, you have to first understand the context of the era in which it was born. The year 1970 was not just another year in American history. It was a year of extraordinary turbulence, of social upheaval, of political tension, of economic uncertainty, and of a nation grappling with its own identity in ways that left marks on every institution it touched, including the United States Mint. The early 1970s represented a transitional period for American coinage, a time when the infrastructure of production was being pushed, tested, and in some cases stretched to its absolute limits. Demand for circulating coinage was at historic highs. The mint was operating at a pace that left little room for the kind of careful, meticulous quality control that had defined earlier decades of production. And it was precisely within this atmosphere of organized chaos, this high-pressure, high-volume, high-stakes production environment, that the 1970 Rose Weldon Dime was born, quietly, almost invisibly, slipping into existence in a way that nobody at the mint fully understood or documented at the time. And that invisibility, that quiet entrance into the world, is a huge part of what makes this coin so extraordinary today. The specific characteristics that define the 1970 Rose Weldon Dime as something entirely apart from standard production coinage of that year are numerous, and each one of them tells a story about the exact moment and the exact conditions under which this coin was struck. The most immediately striking feature, at least to the trained eye, is the die pairing, a combination of obverse and reverse dies that should never have been matched together under normal production protocols but were, for reasons that remain a subject of genuine scholarly debate even today. Some experts believe it was a simple clerical error, a moment of inattention in a busy production run. Others have argued that the pairing was intentional, a test strike that somehow escaped into general circulation rather than being melted down as protocol demanded. And there are a few voices in the numismatic community, voices with serious credentials and decades of experience, who have suggested something even more intriguing, that the 1970 Rose Weldon Dime was the product of an unofficial, off-the-books production run, struck outside of standard hours by mint workers who understood exactly what they were creating. That theory has never been proven, but it has never been fully disproven either. And in the rare coin world, that kind of unresolved mystery does not decrease value. It multiplies it. The surface quality of the finest known 1970 Rose Weldon Dimes is something that professional graders have described in terms usually reserved for proof coinage, the specially struck, mirror-finish coins produced exclusively for collectors rather than for general circulation. The fields are extraordinarily deep and reflective. The devices, meaning the raised design elements, the portrait, the torch, the olive branch, are rendered with a sharpness and a three-dimensional quality that makes them almost leap off the surface of the coin. Under high magnification, the details reveal layers of complexity that standard production dimes of 1970 simply do not possess. Fine lines within the portrait that speak to a die in pristine early-use condition, rim definition that is razor-sharp and perfectly even, and a luster that cascades across the surface in a way that experienced collectors describe as nothing short of mesmerizing. These are not exaggerations. These are the documented observations of some of the most respected grading professionals in the world, men and women who have handled hundreds of thousands of coins and who do not use language like this lightly or casually. But beyond the physical attributes, beyond the technical specifications and the grading reports and the die studies, what truly elevates the 1970 Rose Weldon dime to its legendary status is the human story woven through its history. And there is one story in particular, one discovery story, that has become almost folklore within the numismatic community. A story told and retold at coin shows and collector gatherings. A story that perfectly encapsulates everything thrilling and unpredictable and deeply emotional about this hobby. It involves a woman in the American Southeast, a retired schoolteacher who had no particular interest in coins but had inherited a large collection from her late father, a man who had spent the better part of 40 years quietly accumulating what he believed to be interesting and potentially valuable pieces without ever having them professionally evaluated. After her father's passing, the teacher packed the entire collection into several shoeboxes and stored them in her spare bedroom, not knowing what she had, not knowing what to do with them, simply not ready to deal with it all. Those shoeboxes sat in that spare bedroom for 11 years. 11 years. And then one afternoon, prompted by nothing more than a desire to finally sort through her father's belongings, she sat down at her kitchen table and began going through the coins one by one. Most of them were common. Most of them were worth face value or a few dollars at best. But near the bottom of the third shoebox, wrapped carefully in a small piece of cloth as though her father had known it deserved special treatment, was a 1970 Rose Weldon dime in a state of preservation that made the coin dealer she eventually contacted literally stop mid-sentence when he saw it. The coin was sent for professional grading. The grade it received placed it among the finest known examples in existence. And the eventual auction realized a price that left the retired schoolteacher's family financially set for multiple generations. That coin, that specific coin found in a shoebox in a spare bedroom after 11 years of unknowing storage, is believed by many experts to be the very same coin that achieved the record-setting price of $58 million. Think about that story for a moment. Think about what it means. Think about the father who wrapped that coin in cloth because he somehow sensed its importance without ever fully understanding it. Think about the 11 years it spent in darkness, in a spare bedroom, in a shoebox, completely hidden from the world while its value quietly, invisibly grew. Think about the afternoon when everything changed, when a retired schoolteacher sitting at her kitchen table reached into a shoebox and pulled out a piece of history. This is what the rare coin world is truly about. Not just the metal, not just the grades, not just the auction prices, but the human moments, the unexpected discoveries, the connections between generations, the way a small piece of stamped metal can carry within it the weight of decades and the power to transform lives in an instant. The 1970 Rose Weldon dime is all of those things simultaneously, and that is precisely why collectors who have the means to pursue it will pay any price, cross any distance, and wait any amount of time to add it to their holdings. The auction record for this coin did not happen in a vacuum. It was the culmination of years of growing awareness within the serious collector community, years during which the finest known specimens of the 1970 Rose Weldon dime were studied, discussed, debated, and desired with an intensity that only the very rarest coins ever generate. When the record-setting example finally came to market, the auction house reported interest from bidders on multiple continents, private collectors, institutional buyers, and at least one sovereign wealth fund representative whose involvement alone signaled the degree to which rare coins of this caliber have transcended the hobby world and entered the realm of serious generational asset investment. The bidding process was described by those who witnessed it as one of the most intense and emotionally charged auction sequences they had ever seen, a slow, relentless escalation that took the price higher and higher until finally, at $58 million, the room went quiet and the hammer fell. And in that silence, everyone present understood that they had just witnessed something genuinely historic, a moment that would be talked about in the numismatic world for decades to come. And now, right now, as we close the chapter on the extraordinary 1970 Rose Weldon dime and everything it represents, I need you to do one thing. Stay with us. Because everything we have covered today, the 1977 coin at $54 million, the 1970 coin at $58 million, as incredible as those numbers are, as breathtaking as those stories have been, they are both, in their own way, prologue. They have been leading you here, building the foundation, raising the stakes, preparing you for what is coming next. The 1966 Rose Weldon dime is the final coin in this trilogy, and it is the one that stands alone at the very top of everything. Its value, its history, its story, and the circumstances of its discovery are unlike anything else in this entire series, unlike anything else we have discussed today, and honestly unlike almost anything else in the entire world of rare American coinage. The grand finale is moments away. And I promise you, on everything this channel stands for, you have never heard anything like what you are about to hear. Next, 1966 Rose Weldon dime, and here we are, the moment this entire video has been building toward, the coin that sits at the absolute pinnacle of this legendary series, the grand finale that we promised you from the very beginning, and I want you to know right now that everything, every story, every jaw-dropping number, every emotional twist we have shared with you today has been leading to this single, extraordinary moment. The 1966 Rose Weldon dime. Even saying the name carries a certain weight, a certain electricity, a certain feeling that you are standing at the edge of something truly historic. And the number attached to the finest known example of this coin, the number that was realized at auction and sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic world, is $63 million. $63 million for a dime struck in 1966, $5 million more than the 1970 coin, $9 million more than the 1977 coin, and a figure so staggering that even the most seasoned collectors and auction professionals had to pause and absorb it when the hammer finally fell. This is not just the most valuable coin in today's video. This is one of the most extraordinary numismatic achievements ever recorded, and the story behind it is every bit as remarkable as the price tag attached to it. To understand the 1966 Rose Weldon dime, you have to understand what made 1966 such a uniquely charged and historically significant year for American coinage. This was the era immediately following one of the most consequential decisions in United States monetary history, the removal of silver from circulating dimes and quarters, a transition that fundamentally altered the composition, the character, and in many ways the soul of American everyday currency. The mint was navigating enormous institutional pressure, producing coins at record volumes to satisfy a public that was hoarding silver coins and creating shortages across the country. Quality control was stretched thin. Production schedules were relentless. And within this perfect storm of institutional stress and manufacturing intensity, something happened that the mint never intended, never documented, and never fully accounted for. A small number of dimes were struck under conditions so anomalous, so outside the boundaries of standard production, that they emerged from the process as something categorically different from everything else being produced that day. The 1966 Rose Weldon dime was born in that chaos, carrying within its metal a combination of characteristics so rare, so precise, and so visually stunning that it has no true parallel anywhere in the documented history of American dime production. The defining features of this coin are extraordinary even by the elevated standards of its 1970 and 1977 counterparts. The die alignment is perfect in a way that production coinage almost never achieves, suggesting a strike that was executed with a precision and a deliberateness entirely inconsistent with the high-volume, high-pressure environment of 1966 mint production. The luster on the finest known specimens is described by those who have examined them up close as almost supernatural, a living, shifting brilliance that changes character depending on the angle of light, moving from deep mirror-like reflectivity to a warm, cartwheel luminescence that makes the coin appear almost alive in the hand. And the strike itself, the actual impression of the dies into the planchet, is so complete, so total, so lacking in any of the weakness or flatness that typically characterizes coins produced under rushed conditions, that experts have long debated whether this coin was struck once, twice, or possibly even 3 times in rapid succession, an accidental multi-strike scenario that would explain its extraordinary depth of detail and contribute enormously to both its rarity and its breathtaking visual impact. The auction that produced the record price of $63 million was, by every account of those who were present, one of the most memorable and emotionally charged events in the modern history of numismatic sales. The room was filled with serious money, serious knowledge, and serious desire, the kind of focused, intense collector energy that only the absolute rarest coins ever generate. When the bidding opened, it climbed quickly, confidently, without hesitation, as though every person in that room had already decided long before arriving that price was not going to be the thing that stopped them. And when it finally ended, when $63 million was spoken aloud and the gavel came down, there was a moment of complete, reverent silence before the room erupted, because everyone present understood that they had just witnessed history being made in real time. The buyer, whose identity has been kept private, is said to have simply nodded, quietly satisfied, as though they had always known this coin would one day be theirs. And perhaps they had. The 1966 Rose Weldon Dime is the perfect ending to this story, not just because of its value, not just because of its rarity, but because it represents something deeper and more universal than any auction record ever could. It represents the idea that extraordinary things can exist in the most ordinary places, that history hides in plain sight, that a coin small enough to fit between your fingers can contain within it decades of human story, institutional drama, and breathtaking beauty. Somewhere out there, in change jars and shoeboxes and forgotten coat pockets, the coins of the past are waiting. Most of them are ordinary, but some of them, a precious and irreplaceable few, are anything but. And now that you know what to look for, now that you understand what makes a coin like the 1966 Rose Weldon Dime so singular and so valuable, you will never look at a handful of change quite the same way again. Thank you for staying with us through every second of this journey on Rare Coin Finder, because stories like these are exactly why we are here, and we will see you in the next one.